Hi, everyone. It's Dr. John Dempster, the founder of the Gut Reset Summit, and I'm thrilled to have Dr. Ricky Breyer join us today. Dr. Breyer is a functional health coach, clinical mentor, and practice success coach. And he has spent a decade of his career helping individuals improve their overall health by focusing on their gut as a root cause mechanism. And Ricky has created multiple community based group programs that have helped hundreds of people achieve their health goals. And he does this all over the place. Today, he dedicates his time training not only patients, but also with practitioners on the most effective way to make an impact with their clients. And his main focus is helping practitioners leverage their knowledge to create high impact group programs that create maximum fulfillment in their practices and support radical transformations in their clients. Ricky, great to have you on the Gut Reset Summit today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor, and I'm looking forward to the event.
Yeah, likewise. And we've got a great discussion today. I know we've got a lot of awesome things to bring to fruition in our conversation, but we're really going to talk about the overall theme: is what does it really take to heal someone who's got a chronic gut issue? And again, before we get into these things, I want to hear, what is your story? How did you end up in this space and becoming such an expert in the gut arena?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story is an interesting one. It's not one that I set out for intentionally. I went to school, I graduated as a chiropractor, but if I really look back on the majority of my academic life, around the 10th grade, I started to develop digestive issues. And at first, they were things that I could deal with, but over time, it just started to snowball, got worse and worse and worse. And it got to a point that I wasn't able to eat many foods. I visited so many people, both on the medical and the functional health side of things in the natural health world. And I would get some result, but I wouldn't get all the way better. And it just kind of killed me because I knew this was something that was holding me back substantially. And I always wanted to help people. That was always my big, pure intention. It was why I set out to go to chiropractic school and learn that to really make an impact. But I was so held back by this. If I really calculate the years, it was about 14 years of pretty bad suffering without any sort of answer. And then once I graduated school, and I don't even know how I did that, reflecting on hindsight, lots of just last minute freakouts and just so many stressful moments. But coming out, I was grateful, but I couldn't work. I didn't feel well enough. And I've always been somebody that I want to lead by example. So I knew that I couldn't tell people to get healthy if I didn't feel healthy myself. So, as kind of a last hope, like many people get to at some point on their journey, I actually found a clinic called the Living Proof Institute. And I went there as a patient. I never, ever expected to then become a part of that clinic and help people through that. But within 3 months of working with this clinic, my digestive symptoms were under control. I couldn't even believe it. It was the best I've ever felt. And that's where I started to learn about functional principles. I started to learn about the microbiome. I was like, why hasn't anybody ever talked to me about this? Why did I not learn about this in school? And slowly, I just became obsessed with, if I can do it, other people can do it. So I want to learn the best, most effective way possible to do this. So then I went back, I got certifications in all sorts of functional health type of strategies and techniques. And I learned everything I possibly could, read every book I possibly could. And I actually became one of the clinicians at the Living Proof Institute at the time and worked with over, I'd say, 2,000 people, probably closer to 2,500 people across that span. Lots of people would have miraculous recoveries. A lot of people were coming to see me that were kind of at the end of their wits. And I built a really good style, a really good bond with these individuals. And then the pandemic hit, and we had to make a lot of changes then. And one of the things I always wanted to do was I wanted to build group and community programs, because one of the loneliest things ever is suffering with a health issue. So I really wanted to bring this to more people and connect these people with each other as well. So in the pandemic, I created a couple of group programs that are still running very successfully and creating life changing transformations. And then slowly over time, and I've been doing it along the way, people started asking me, practitioners started asking me, hey, can you kind of teach me your style, your methodology? What are you using? What are you looking after? How do I build my own group program? So I've also been training lots and lots of practitioners on how to successfully do that. So what started as chronic illness, no hope in sight, just gave me my life's work, my life's mission, my life's purpose.
Amazing. I mean, I love that story, and it's so often that it's a story like that that fuels our career, and especially into a niche like gut health. And you and I, we've discussed many times off camera, some of the real classical ways to help somebody when they're struggling with a gut issue. Where do you usually begin when somebody walks in your office and says, "Hey, listen, I've been dealing with whether it's IBS or IBD." Where do you begin?
Yeah, I think the first place, and I didn't do this to be fair right off the bat. It's something I learned, and it's interesting because every person that we see, and I'm sure you would agree, they kind of get the worst version of ourselves because we keep getting better. So I feel really bad for the first 5 to 10 people I worked with because you get better and better over time. And where I actually start with everybody now is I frame expectations. And I feel that is one of the most important things because the reason a lot of people had a 14-year journey like myself, and I was guilty of this, is because they're kind of looking for that canary in a coal mine. Like they're looking for that one factor that's just going to let every puzzle piece fall into place and they're going to feel absolutely amazing. Oh, maybe I got a parasite and that is the root cause to all of my suffering. Maybe I have this vitamin deficiency or my liver's not working right. And they really focus in on that, but that should not be your expectation. Or in many ways, as backwards as it sounds, your goal should not be complete resolvement of your health issue in that unrealistic timeline. So the very first thing I do is I have a conversation where we kind of look at all of the pieces that could be contributing to their poor health. And this is why I love the functional approach. We're looking at the function of every category. And the analogy I always use, it's a good visual for anybody listening, is you can draw this out if you wanted, but take a pie chart, draw a big circle on a piece of paper, divide it into a bunch of pizza slices or pie slices. And these don't have to be to scale or anything like that. Write all of the things you feel are contributing to your health issue. Do you possibly have poor digestive issues? Do you have lots of stress in your life? Do you have terrible relationships? Do you have a job that is just sucking the life out of you and it's something that's super stressful? And as you start to fill in bubbles here, the one thing I can't tell you and you can't tell yourself is what percent, what size each piece of that pie is. So your goal should change from, oh my God, I'm looking for that one thing that's going to fix all of my problems, to how do I start chipping away at this pie? How do I start working on this piece of the puzzle and this piece of the puzzle and this piece of the puzzle? And you might find you get to puzzle piece number two, puzzle piece number three, and that was 50% of the pie. You're like, oh my God, I never thought that was the case. So, what I love to do with people right off the bat is simply frame expectations, get them in the right mindset to work with you because this is a two-way street. I always also say, I teach every practitioner that I work with, is one of the reasons we take on so much stress is we feel personal responsibility to quote unquote heal people, but we're not healers. We can't wave a magic wand and have all of their health issues go away. We have to give them guidance and then they have to leave the office and actually put that into place. So I find just starting there, the journey is completely different for both the practitioner and the patient slash client. It's just a completely different relationship.
Yeah, I'm really glad you say that because so many people do when they come into the clinic for the first time, they think, okay, I have SIBO. This is the one thing, or as you say, I have X, Y, Z, whatever that factor is. They'll bring it to your attention, and they're hung on that. But everything comes together and works together. And as we are going to unpack, there's so many different systems. Now, what is an expected time frame? And now everyone is different, but when you are framing this from the get-go and somebody's looking for that light switch type of improvement, like quick flick and it's fixed, how do you frame that? And what's your what do you set out from a time frame?
Yeah, absolutely. So the time frame again is to make a big impact. It's not to technically get over everything. I hope that everything resolves and you're living an amazing life, health symptoms go away. But really, the first kind of timeline I put in people's head is about 6 to 8 months. I found that to be a good timeline, especially when we're talking in respect to the gut, because there's a lot of steps that you want to walk through when you're working with somebody in a gut health capacity. And sometimes you got to chip away at things slow. You got to kind of take a pick and chisel approach. You can't take a sledgehammer approach. So I find the first kind of mental timeline is 6 to 8 months. But also, if they really want to look into the data, some data does suggest that it takes 18 to 24 months to heal a leaky gut. That doesn't mean it's going to take you that long to feel better. People typically feel better week to week, month to month, but you want to be in this for the long term. This isn't something that's a quick fix, or it's not also something that, as an example, anybody who has a gut issue, and I'm sure you agree, like a gluten-free diet is something we recommend. As much as I hate to take gluten away from people, I know it tastes delicious. I know it's super addictive. It's something that I don't want to do, but just again, looking all the data, it kind of makes a tug of war situation where you're trying to improve the gut and you're setting yourself back. But even something like that, sometimes early on in my career, I had people that are like, okay, you're going to make me give up gluten. Is it for a month? Is it for 2 months? Is it for 6 months? Are you going to make me cut out the processed stuff for 2 months? And then that's where now I realize they have not changed their identity to that of a healthy person. So even though you might be able to make an impact while they're working with you, these are probably going to be your revolving door individuals that just keep either hopping from practitioner to practitioner or keep coming to see you for years for the same recurring issue. But it's because the timeline wasn't accurate. It wasn't given enough kind of wiggle room or space overall.
Well, listen, I know a lot of people listening to this are probably on their health journey and they're probably ahead of the average person that's out there, but we still have those inklings to draw back, and hopefully it's not for many of us listening right now, but like to the junk food, as you say, or to the gluten, as you say. How do you change their mindset around that? If you do see one of these types of clients that come into your clinic and you see them as that revolving door type of client, is there a way that you can actually educate them to get out of that, obviously for their own benefit? Or is that a person where you're like, no, we're just not the right fit?
Great question. I feel most of them that come in to see you, they've done their research, they are wanting to make the change, but we have to honor the reasons that they will resort to those behaviors. So for some people, junk food becomes a coping mechanism. Especially, I know we lived through a stressful few years with the world situation, and a lot of people went from working in offices to work from home. Refrigerator is an arm's length away, the cupboard, the junk food, it's all an arm's length away. So these people now have an environment issue. Some people have almost similar to chemical dependency on certain types of junk food. So we have to find out why they're eating it. What's the reason for you to eat it? And I always try to change identity. I do this with practitioners. I do this with clients. I do this with everyone across the board. Is when you change your identity and you act as if everything you do is filtered through that identity that you've created for yourself. So if we call, I just made this up, but let's say my 14 years of suffering, I was unhealthy Ricky, and my now newfound self is healthy Ricky. If I filter everything through healthy Ricky, that junk food, as enticing as it sounds, and trust me, I love potato chips like the next person. I could down a whole Costco sized bag of it, but I won't do it because I want to be the healthiest version of myself. If I do that, it's going to make me more tired. It's going to mess with my sleep, and it's a domino effect. The day after, I'm going to want more. So if you run everything through that identity, I think that's what really creates compliance in individuals and lets them see the bigger picture. And then I also find language is very important. A lot of people will say, I can't. I can't eat sugar because my functional practitioner told me not to eat sugar. I can't eat gluten because somebody told me. But I can't is also very restrictive for the brain. So sometimes the way that they speak themselves, if they say, I don't eat, now it's coming from a place of power. It's coming from a place of self-responsibility. It's coming from a place I carry myself to a higher standard. So these individuals are way more likely to see that. But a lot of times they don't catch it until you call them out. And they often tell you, hey, nobody's ever told me that before. Nobody's ever caught that before. So I find this is where there's kind of your foundational, you change your diet, you change your lifestyle, you take some supplements, and possibly there might be a mixed medical approach in there as well. But underneath it all, like, who are you? What are the thoughts going through your head? How do you feel? How are you moving during the day? Who are the people you interact with during the day? Those are going to be the needle movers, especially when we come to gut health.
I love that. I think that is so important. And, again, I think it can go beyond, the wayside a little bit for most of us because we're so focused on SIBO, we're so focused on
Yeah.
parasite or gluten, whatever it might be. We forget about that identity that we must forge and hold ourselves accountable to, really. And I think this is a really interesting segue, because one of the things I want to talk to you a lot about today is the power of community. And as a healer, that is right now known as one of the doctors of the future. I want to hear how you're embracing community-based treatments and how that can really benefit somebody who's listening to this right now, who's like, listen, I've only done one-on-one in the past. How would, I don't want to share what I'm dealing with publicly with a group of strangers. How does it work? And why is it working?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's something that is extremely ancestral. it's built into us from the start of time. We've grown up in small tribes for many, many, many years. And it wasn't until really the last few hundred years that we were able to make buildings that are 50 floors and have people packed in them like sardines and everybody's living in close proximity. But most people in that building don't even know their neighbors, right? So really that community aspect is missing. And they've also found, and I know some studies have been done out of the UCLA Stress Lab, different places have really looked at it, but community seems to be one of the most protective factors. If you look at all of the blue zones where people live over 100, it's the community that really keeps these people going. There's vast differences in their diets, right? Not everybody is eating a Mediterranean diet. Different cultures have, I saw a data point on Okinawa, Japan, I believe it was, and I think I saw somewhere close to 70% carbohydrates in their diet. So that would probably drive all the keto, pro keto individuals nuts, right? So I think community is extremely protective for individuals. And a mentor of mine always says that even prisoners in jail, they will prefer living next to murderers and people who have committed huge atrocities versus being in solitary confinement, right? So it's something that's like built into our DNA. And as I mentioned earlier, there's nothing lonelier than a healing journey. There's nothing lonelier than you having symptoms. So even when I look back on how I felt in the 10th grade, no one really knew I was suffering with that other than my immediate family. I was so embarrassed to tell friends, family. Nobody wants to talk about gut issues, right? It's something that's almost now a bit more openly accepted, but back then it's almost like as a male, you feel a sign of weakness in a way by admitting this. So when I created these community-based programs, we're really not treating anything. We're making healthy individuals by practicing all of these changes together. And one of the big effects that we need to honor is the group effect. And I like to call it the group fitness class effect even, right? So I know I've taken short stints at certain workout programs from like F45 to your CrossFits or any of these group classes. And especially F45, because you're lined up right next to each other. If the individual next to me did 10 repetitions with that weight, I don't want to go and do 8. I want to go and do 12, right? So the group effect really pushes you to be compliant. And this is why a lot of people struggle to hit their fitness goals, workout goals, when they just go to the gym on their own. It's what gym memberships really take advantage of to rack up their revenue, is because you're not going to show up unless you have somebody to work out with or somebody giving you kind of like a challenge or a comparison factor. So I found that a lot of people fall off health journeys because it just simply gets too lonely. They have nobody to talk to, nobody to vent to, nobody to really communicate with, and they don't even know. Here's the other big one. When we are coming in the natural health world, a lot of times there's healthy skepticism. People have their entire life been a part of the medical system. And not to say we are two different, vastly disconnected approaches, but there is kind of a line in the sand that's been drawn. And a lot of people have this healthy skepticism. But if they see somebody else who's benefited in your group and gotten over something, that is instant fire, instant motivation that, hey, I can do this too. So through these group formats, I have one for transforming gut health. I have one for transforming metabolic health as well. We found that people are getting results because it increases compliance, it increases happiness, and they also have a community to now come in and check in with. I have some individuals who did everything they needed to do in the program. All of their program requirements are done. They're not actually doing anything right now from a supplement standpoint, or like they're just continuing maintenance stuff, but they still come back to check in with other members who are in the program just to give support. So building community, I feel, is huge. And what I realized is, being a one-on-one practitioner for so long, I always thought in a community setting, your results would go down because everybody doesn't get the individuality. But there's so many things, and some of the things I'd love to talk about today, there's so many things beyond that foundational diet, lifestyle supplement that could radically transform your health that you're not doing. And it might be even more important than those things. So I found that all of the outcomes went way up once I adopted the group mindset. And it took me a while too, just being a classical one-on-one mindset individual. So it's honestly something I wish I had done earlier. It's I can't say it's a regret because it's been going well, but it's always something I'm like, I wish I had done earlier. I wish many more people had benefited from this approach.
I'm glad you brought that up because, one of the objections that we've heard is that, listen, isn't this supposed to be a tailored approach? If you put me into a group program, isn't that just going to be a cookie cutter approach? So, can you maybe dive into that just a little bit more, how you address the nuances of each individual amongst a group program?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about individuality, I feel like a lot of times the individuality, it's used as kind of something that sets the bar of the program really high. So anybody who's saying that they have a highly individualized approach, I don't doubt it. But if we kind of go back in time a little bit, our ancestors didn't have any access to supplements or anything like that. A lot of the tribal cultures on the planet still don't take supplement. A lot of these blue zones take no supplements whatsoever, right? So when we talk about individuality, they're not all eating the same thing. They're eating different diets. So technically speaking, they're getting varying levels of this vitamin and this mineral. It's not always picture perfect. So the big lens shift, that the big shift I'd like everybody to start to consider is that a lot of times when we talk about individuality, we're practicing what I call addition by addition. So, what can I add in for this individual to try to add health? And I find with the majority of chronic gut type stuff that does occur, it's more of an addition by subtraction mindset. So, if somebody does have a SIBO, would it make sense for us to just give them all the vitamins and minerals we feel, maybe it's even coming back on testing, we feel they're missing because the SIBO's stealing it? They'll be on those vitamins for the rest of their life. It's not to say they aren't important for a short term, support their body, nourish their body, get them nutrient repleted. But what would be more impactful? Us giving them those supplements for years and years and years, or simply working on their SIBO? If they feel they have a parasite, that parasite is an elephant in the room. Would it make more sense to work on some sort of approach that would remove that from the system versus us trying to out supplement it with enzymes and anti-inflammatories and trying to work around that parasite? So I find when individuals talk about the individualized approach, they're looking for, okay, addition, 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 addition. And even with diet, I know in my own health journey, certain things, cutting them out made a profound difference versus me getting an individualized diet from a nutritionist. And I worked with a few nutritionists who have best-selling books right now, and they made me custom meal plans, but they were very hard to adhere to. And simply removing one or two key things helped me dramatically more in that moment. It's not to say they were bad programs. So I find a lot of times we don't really understand what it takes for the body to start to chip away at these health issues, to kind of transform, become a different person, a healthier version of ourselves. It doesn't often involve as much individuality as we think. Now, if we're talking bringing in a genetic component, sure, there's tons of individuality if you do a genetic test on somebody. If somebody has chronic, very debilitating health issues, they have a very high degree of complexity, they have multiple autoimmunities, maybe that's somebody who needs more types of individuality. But at the same time, those individuals probably wouldn't be the best for a group format. But I find the gut and group works very, very well. If individuals have your IBS symptoms, your bloating, your gas, those types of things, it goes hand in hand, addition by subtraction most of the time.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask, what is like an ideal candidate for a group program, and what is somebody, what is a candidate for somebody who should not be in more likely in a one-on-one care type of plan? So, who are the ideal checklist items for a group program candidate?
Yeah, absolutely. So people that are good candidates, they'll be very open to learn, open-minded to the approach. They will be okay coming to live sessions potentially. They will have the ability to do things on their own to an extent, have self-responsibility, know that they're going to hold themselves accountable. They're going to check in with their coach or their practitioner as well. The individuals that aren't the greatest candidates would be somebody that has extreme degrees of case complexity, somebody who might need customized testing done, customized supplementation done, and then really individuals who might even be I don't want to use the word introverted because there's many introverts that do great in group programs, but people who are more reserved, people who highly just want to keep things private, then a group format's not going to work that well. If we really take a look at a lot of courses, they don't get a high degree of finish or success by the end of it. There's very few people who are motivated enough to see one through to completion. So there is that aspect of there being a coach a part of it, a coaching aspect a part of it. So I would say the not so good candidates would be the ones that they don't feel that group is right for them. They just feel they're not going to get specific enough, or they want to remain ultra private.
Okay, so you've got this group of like-minded, coachable clients. Where do you begin on that? We set the framework, we set the mindset a little bit and the expectations. Where do you go from there?
Yes, so few different categories that we want to work on. Back to that pie chart approach, we want to start chipping away at all of these categories. And I would say a few of these categories have supplement needs. So my gut program does focus on a set of supplementation that walks you through prepping your detox pathways, increasing energy in the body. Then we do a bit of a microbiome reset as well. We use some binders in there as well. And then we do some gut repair toward the end of it. So that's the supplement side. But I find that's a small fraction of what makes people successful. If people just cookie cutter followed that approach, I wouldn't say everybody would have a 100% success rate. And on the other side, there's all of the, I would categorize them under lifestyle, but more of the advanced lifestyle side of things that really have made the forefront of research in recent times. And I've built them into the program to the best of my ability. But many people have very poor circadian rhythm management. I feel in the next few years, we're going to hear about the detrimental effect of light and kind of the way we live. And there's already several studies backing this up, and microbiome specific studies as well, showing how our circadian rhythm influences our digestive function. And a lot of people are not getting real sunlight. We live north of the border, so we're not really getting much sun for the next few months, unfortunately, unless we travel somewhere. So we're kind of fish out of water here. And that really resets your circadian rhythm, which kind of dictates almost everything else in your body. So we don't have these kind of bright mornings. And many people, even through the summer, don't go outside. They don't get morning sunlight. This is extremely detrimental. It sounds so simple, like, hey, this supplement, I think, that has all this advanced stuff is going to do way more for me than me just getting morning sunlight. But I would argue it's the complete opposite. That sun is going to calibrate so many things in your body. And then through the day, we have really, really bright days as well, but not bright as outside. So we get a lot of blue light from computer screens, from our cell phones, from tablets, from TVs, all of that, but we don't get a balanced spectrum of light. And I would say the evenings are where we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, literally and figuratively, is where we get bombarded with this blue light when we're supposed to have really, really dark evenings. And this is how you manage your circadian rhythm. So I would say 99% of the people that go into the program, I ask if they had been doing this prior to hearing about this, and they're like, no, we heard about it, but we never put it into place. They weren't managing it in any way. So they're literally rolling a boulder up a hill. They're doing all these things they feel are so correct, but this is one of the reasons you're not better. This is one of the big reasons you're not better. And even if we go, so that's circadian rhythm, if we go a step further, I think another topic that has gained a lot of steam is the power of breath. So the way that we breathe completely changes our health. And a lot of people have massive dental issues, massive structural issues, airway issues, deviated septums that don't allow them to breathe through their nose properly. And when we talk about your IBSs, your bloating, a lot of it is nervous system based. And what faster, more effective way to influence the nervous system than breath. So a lot of people don't breathe properly. They become mouth breathers. And if you look at, there's a lot of airway dentists who are now doing amazing work, structural dentists doing amazing work. People literally, especially kids, and I have a 3.5-year-old, so I've actually already taken him to an airway dentist to assess this. And he actually does have a bit of an overbite, which we're going to be correcting soon. They will actually form misshapen parts of their face because they haven't been breathing well since childhood. And that makes them more prone to things like ADHD, more prone to anxiety, more prone to digestive issues, not making enough enzymes, more prone to cavities. So I feel a lot of people who have done everything else right, if they're not assessing the oral microbiome, oral structure, airways, this is a huge aspect. Even myself, I had adult braces for about 3 years because if you see old pictures of me, my mouth was narrow. Everything was crowded in and I didn't have enough space for my tongue. So I would actually get sores on the side of my tongue. And I became a mouth breather for that. And I didn't realize that that was causing a degree of anxiety I used to suffer from as well. So it's just radical transformation. So as you start chipping away at these categories, you get better and better. And the one that I also want to make sure it's a simple one, but one I think we should always revisit is stress, right? And everybody I talk to says, hey, my stress is manageable. I think very few people admit to it. And I've worked with a lot of executives who they love their jobs. They work lots of hours a week. And you actually ask them, like, do you feel stressed? They're like, no, not at all. But then when either some sort of stress test comes in on them that we do, like either we look at their adrenals or their neurotransmitters and everything's off the charts. And you're like, oh my God, like you are definitely stressed out. Like, I think what everybody needs to do, this is an extreme example, probably not a realistic example, but I feel everybody needs to do it, is compare yourself to somebody who was, let's say, born a millionaire or a multimillionaire. Their entire existence, they just chill out on a beach. They take in morning sun every day, like an extreme, unrealistic example, but that person has 0 out of 10 stress. If you compare yourself to that person, where would you grade your stress on a scale of 10? And for those of us that say, hey, our stress is anywhere between 4 to 6, let's say, we kind of normalize that. It's very easy to normalize. We can normalize it for a decade plus before some sort of health issue comes from that. But I would say that is destroying your gut function. You are not making the right amount of stomach acid because of that. You're not moving bile because of that. You're not making pancreatic juices because of that. So even stress, we need to frame it differently. So I always, it's the longest module in my program. It's the mindset module, and we go through a lot of these variables there. But I find people aren't doing this, and that's what it really takes to heal a gut, because your gut's a two-way street with your brain, and your nervous system just interconnects everything. So I feel we're just too. What's the problem? What's the label on the problem? So let's take SIBO, for example. Why does this person have SIBO? Because they're not doing all of this. So that's how I really operate. And I want people to have breakthroughs by realizing that, so they don't have to keep seeing me for the rest of their life either.
Totally. Yeah. Incredibly powerful. Now, a big part of any gut program, there will be a discussion about food. Now, how do you navigate diet and what to eat and what not to eat with a group of 30 individuals, for example?
Yeah, great question. So I use what's tried and tested, essentially, what has some data behind it. So I know there's many different names on diets, but everybody doesn't necessarily have to start at the same place. So in my program, I allow people to pick their diet journey, pick what you feel meets your criteria the most. So for somebody who coming in who doesn't have a lot going on, maybe they have some minor energy issues, they're noticing sometimes they get to bloating, it's not too consistent. For them, I'd have them eliminate certain big inflammatory proteins such as gluten, processed dairy, sugar, things like that. But for some individuals who are coming in possibly with a pre-existing autoimmune diagnosis or something where they have more sensitivity, we can kind of go to the next level where we adopt more of a whole food diet, kind of your classical paleo diet. But I like to call it a modified paleo because I do allow some non-paleo things to continue in there if they tolerate them well, all whole food based like legumes and things like that, and then even healthier forms of dairy as well. And then if that doesn't work, we have the autoimmune paleo protocol. Beyond that, we do have modifications if somebody feels histamine is a part of their diet. We have modifications if somebody feels that FODMAPs are needed to reduce. And I've met a lot of people who have probably done low FODMAP diets for far too long, and that can backfire on them a lot of the time as well. So I really have people pick their diet journey, but don't go further than you need to. Not everybody needs to start with a restricted 10 food diet or something like that. So I found that really helps because, again, it's addition by subtraction. As long as we can subtract all that not so good stuff that you're potentially doing beforehand, it's going to move that health needle forward.
Awesome. What other parts of your program have we not touched on that are super vital to seeing somebody succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. I also find from a gut brain axis standpoint, a lot of people don't realize. I'm sure it was probably spoken about throughout the event, but the vagus nerve, the role of the vagus nerve in all of this. So that's kind of the I would kind of consider it the electrical connection. So you can kind of build your own car, you can put all the right parts in, but if the wiring isn't right, and I have a lot of family in the auto body business, if the wiring, the electrical isn't right, it is the biggest pain in your butt because things are not going to run the same way. So it's no different with your vagus nerve. And from what I've learned about the vagus nerve, and there's many great resources on that, it's not technically a muscle, but it kind of operates like a muscle where it has its own tone. So just like if you just went to the gym and started doing bicep curls for the next 6 months, you'd build a nice, beautiful bicep. It'd have increased tone. We don't do things that necessarily increase our vagal tone. We actually probably do the opposite. We have like vagal atrophy going on. We don't build good vagal tone because of all of the stress in our life, our behaviors, our sleep, all of those factors. So I think it's something that needs to be there. And fortunately, there's a lot of functional neurology exercises that are super easy to implement that people can do on a day-to-day basis that start to build this tone as well and rebuild that connection.
Yeah, that's great. It's such a big topic. We have discussed that in numerous talks throughout the summit, but it's always great to get different angles and ways to nuance the the vasovagal pathway. Well, listen, I think a lot of people listening right now are very intrigued by group programs. I know I am. If somebody was to look for you, Dr. Ricky, where would they find you online?
Yeah, so my website, which it's going live as we speak, so it'll definitely be live by the event date. It's rbrar.com. So you can find me there, and I do have free resources for practitioners as well there in terms of getting maximum fulfillment from your practices. So it's all there, r4rickybrar.com.
Awesome. Listen, Dr. Ricky, this has been a pleasure. And obviously, you and I, we live in the same city. So this is an honor to have somebody local on this summit and this event today. But thank you for everything that you're doing. And thank you for taking the time to speak to us on the Gut Reset Summit.
Absolutely my pleasure. And thank you for putting this amazing event together. I know it's going to benefit lots of people.
Yeah, we're very excited. Thank you so much.